Hey everyone, welcome back to my vlog. I am Joy, also known as Dr. Joy, and diving into the creation, the implementation of the purple print way, my purple print journey, kind of how I tapped into having more intuitive living. Um, I'll talk about some of the mess and some of the lessons from the mess being the mess of my journey, right? Um, this particular portion tonight is going to actually cover more than usual. Usually, like I take some pictures from 1 month and kind of go over what was going on then, but we'll be fast forwarding. So we'll be coming all the way from July 2022, and I'll put up the pictures throughout, all the way until June 2023. And there's going to be a big gap that happens from September 2022 to June 2023. So a lot of things occurred in a short period of time, a lot of like big things. So I do want to also say before I start this particular episode, or what we want to call it, trigger warning for anyone who might be triggered by talk of like violence, that kind of thing. Yeah. So if that is not for you, you can skip this one. But I want to get into it because I know that this is going to be something that a lot of people are going to be able to connect with, that people will not talk about out loud, because it'll sound like madness, first of all. It'll probably sound like a lot of things, but that's why I think it's important to normalize not just that you experience it, because I want us to know that we don't deserve a lot of things that happen, but also that we do survive it. And hopefully we get nuggets from it. So I'm tired. It's nighttime right now, so my lighting is a little bit different, and even the fact that my lighting isn't like I don't have this whole setup for my lighting, it's because I am nomadic. And I don't know if I mentioned that in my other things, but I'll probably talk a little bit about it today. But well, that might be the extent. I am nomadic in this moment, right? When I'm telling my stories, I've been telling it about when I was in my house, and I'll talk about what went on with the house today. But at this point in time, I am a traveling yogi, a traveling therapist, teacher, all the things. So my backgrounds could change from 1 month to the next, and the lighting is what it is. But the reason I was really that I'm on here at night, I usually try to come on during the day and do some filming, because the light during the day is beautiful. Natural light is absolutely beautiful. I've been loving soaking that up in my space and opening all the windows and everything like that. But I was really heavy today, and I sensed that maybe it had to do with all the things that I'm going to try to go over tonight. And I have mentioned before that this has been quite therapeutic for me to be able to dive into the stories and also see them from another perspective and hold them in a different space. And if you are someone who maybe stays stuck in a certain perception of history and you find yourself looping around it, I would suggest doing something like this for yourself, even if it's just for you, like doing a video diary or vlog for you to go over and be like, wow, now that I'm saying it out loud, it feels different when I say it out loud. And that is really what happens in therapy. When you come into a room, if you have a therapist, a counselor, a coach, what happens is you say the stuff out loud and your brain gets to hear it in a different way. I'm like, wait, that landed different. Yes, we reflect back the things that we heard to also help you hear it differently, so you have an opportunity to realign perspective, but you can do that on your own too. Okay. All right. So getting into these pictures, definitely there was a shift here. Yeah, I remember, like, I was really, really, really feeling myself. Because I had just colored my hair. I had allowed it to be lighter, and then I added color. This was actually something that I was afraid of. I was expanding in my business. I was doing well with like speaking, with teaching classes, but I was still in this space of what I needed to look like to not be booted out of the spaces. I was on someone else's platform at that point in time, and where I still was all about being myself. It was just like this silent acceptance of being myself to a point. So at that point, I think I was really in my like it just feels better to be authentic and not to just not to hide. It's just like holding your breath. I remember when I was a teenager, maybe I was a little bit older, I can't remember, but I remember going into whatever event my family was doing at some point in time. We would have, different things that would happen, like family reunions or barbecues or lunches, whatever the case may be. So there was something that we went to, and I was sitting next to my sister because that's who I was sitting next to. And she said to me, she was so angry. She's like, why you always gotta be so bright? Like you want everybody to look at you. I'm like, what? First of all, this is how I dress, right? This is considered bright. Like it's just how I dress. I dress the way that I feel. I feel great. I feel good, right? Um, but realistically, I remember saying to her, I was like, well, here's the thing. Everybody stares at me every time I go somewhere. They had me convinced everyone stared at me because I was funny looking, because I was fugly or something like that, right? Like that was the messaging that was very prevalent to make sure that I didn't show myself, or like you don't want anyone to look at you, like you're the hunchback of Notre Dame, like make sure you hide. So it was very irritating for me not to be following those unspoken rules. And so she wanted to make sure that I knew, like, you're being too much. Like that is so strange. Like, why do you even care? Why do you care? Um, she cared big time, right? I realize that now. Like my sister has always had a thing, like a little silent competition that I didn't know about, right? But this was the guidance that I was getting in my growth, right? In my whatever, it didn't matter how old I was. I always deferred to someone else who I trusted in. um and one of the things I'll reflect back on that, and I've probably said it on reels now, like we can't be asking advice of people who are not happy, first of all. And they have no evidence in their relationships of making someone else happy or being prosperous, right? Like if and not if that's what you want. If you want to be prosperous, you can't ask someone who has never been prosperous how to be prosperous, right? And I wouldn't ask all the time. Sometimes I would get very much unsolicited advice, but you also need to take heed to just not receive information that you don't need, right? And if you didn't ask for it, you probably didn't need it. You'll learn that more as you continue to grow, that like it's very rare that you get unsolicited advice that actually applies to you. Typically, it's somebody who has a feeling inside of them and they want to share something with you about how to mute or move yourself to reposition yourself in a way that would make them more comfortable. Typically, people are not just giving you advice because it is the best for you. It's really about their perspective and how it would make them feel. Even if that means it would make them feel more justified in their living if you also live in that way, it would make them feel like they're not doing enough if you turn it down and start doing less. Okay. So saying all that to say, like that was the type of guidance that I had. And so being in this purple print perspective, it what comes up for me is the understanding the importance of really going within, really learning to tap into what my body, my intuition, my spirit feels like, because I can't just take it from other humans all the time, right? And at that time, or most of my life, it's been pretty much identified that it would be disrespectful to not take the advice of an elder and that type of thing. But you have to at some point give yourself that respect and props of being as wise as you really are, and realize where those rules don't apply to you anymore. They apply to a system that is the same. And if you're not trying to be the same, those rules don't apply to you, right? So that said, I was really in this space of feeling very, very good, feeling more vibrant. And what's funny about this is, I think when I first did it, yeah, I had a couple of partners at this point, and I was with a partner who brought the spice out of me for sure, and just made this more fun to do this exploration. I feel like each of my partners really brought out different aspects of me that um, I got to honor. Like they would honor it, and they would be a mirror, right? And I could see it in myself, and then I could live it in that way. So, and my partners never actually gave me unsolicited advice. they were not, but I did go to them for different things. And typically they were a little bit older than me. Typically that was the truth. And I think it's a wonderful thing in your community, whatever the makeup, whatever the relationship dynamic, that you can, when you need to, right, tap into others. However, who are genuinely wanting to give guidance, or even if they're not like having a desire, they don't have a desire to steer you wrong, right? They're willing to share their oopses and things that they have learned. Okay. So me having this type of support was really great at this time. And so what happens during this time period, I would say around the September photos, was I had ended something, I'm gonna say temporarily, with one of my partners, right? And I was really sad about it. I was very, very sad about it. So then it was me trying to learn how to grieve with still existing partners, and managing how everyone feels about you even grieving. Like, are you allowed to grieve? You're like, well, you already have everything you need, so why are you even sad? It's not like that. Like, other people that you're with are just disposable fun things, and like, oh well, who cares? I have the core thing that I need. Like, no, if you've built a friendship or relationship with people, they're all important, and so it is sad to lose any of them, right? All right, so say that to say that I had this period from September 2022 where I was doing pretty okay, right? And that's basically when I ended that particular relationship until let's say not June 2023. It wasn't quite there. Okay. So from, let's say, September to like December, there was a little bit of a break with the partner, and then I kind of reestablished, reconnected, right, with my partner. And I had a really good space with the support that I had around me. I think we created like a calendar. We were doing a lot of things. So things kept getting better with work, with and when I say work, yes, working for other people, but also my work, with my career, with my brand, right, with Glow Your Goddess, with establishing Joy and Dr. Joy. Now, what's interesting about this time period, I was just about done with my PhD. So there was a time period in here where I did my dissertation and got support around that. But then I started doing more articles. I started presenting more original work because of the book that I wrote and the yoga that I was doing. So what was interesting about this is I had a book launch for my book, for my second book, and that was the one that was associated with my dissertation. And I didn't want to just do a book launch that was, let's sit around and have crackers and wine and talk about this book. So what I did was I created the yoga class, like from the book, like the things that I said, like the therapeutic things that we could do. I wanted to actually bring it to life and have women be able to do that. And it was so good. People actually came. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I think at that point, I had been doing a whole lot of yoga, but I hadn't actually taught a lot of yoga. And so there was a sensual yoga class that I ended up taking and getting like certified down the road. But so as I was doing my practice with that, with everybody, it was supposed to be this one-time thing, and it was really good. So the class was so beautiful, all the elements that got brought together in class, and just allowing myself to tap into my healer self and let that really flow and not be afraid of it. I'm always nervous before any class, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person. People have no idea the amount of anxiety that comes up. It's like, I don't want to mess it up. But looking back, that's also a thing that I now do address differently when I do a class. I don't necessarily have a script anymore. I don't necessarily like, let me study all these things. You have a body of work that is there, right? And then what is our job as someone who gives a message is to interpret it the way that you interpret it through your lens, because maybe someone needs to receive it in that way. And there's nothing to practice around just being who you are, right? So what these different, I would have these different opportunities that would come up. It just kept showing me like, you got this, it didn't necessarily turn off the nervousness, but it increased my confidence. And like, whenever I do it, people always receive something from it. So much so by the end of the book launch party, they were like, well, can we do it again? I was like, well, it's just for the book launch, like, well, I would love to do this in another 2 weeks. Can we do this in 2 weeks? I was shocked, but I was happy. So I went ahead and I started booking that studio that I was at for every 2 weeks. And I would have people coming every 2 weeks to have this class. And it would maybe be up to like, say, like 4 to 7 or 8 people at a time. So it wasn't that many people. And I was having to pay for the studio every time. So it was getting kind of hard to afford. But I did it for a while, like some months or whatever. And then eventually what ended up happening is a client of mine contacted me and told me that there was a studio that she went to for Zumba, different things like that, right? And it was actually closer to my house. And so she's like, maybe you can rent a space here because I really want to go back to these classes that you were doing. I was like, oh my God, that's so great. But so I went to the woman to ask about renting studio, and she told me that she didn't rent out space. But what she did, she had looked me up. And so she asked if I could actually stay on as one of her teachers and actually just have a regular schedule, which I did. And so for 6 months, I had that. And it was the most beautiful experience. Okay. So I'm going super fast through different stuff, but so different things were going really well, but different things were still happening. So even I think before the class happened, so I had this, I think like another breakup happened with the same partner, and it was like the last breakup. It was like, that was it. But it was really, really, really sad. It was a very devastating thing. It was because it was a big part of the identity that I was really starting to understand in terms of like my tantric self and my irreverent self. And I had these particular partners who were with me while I was doing my PhD and doing my research and getting really excited about it. And also having editors like, reach out to me. So a lot of things were happening where I was like, oh my God, you're really like becoming Dr. Joy. Like, oh my God, we're really going to be able to help the community the way that we want to. And I could see that the more that I got published, the less my partners were sticking around. And the more that I was doing my work, the more that I was traveling to go do more of these retreats to get connected with my truth, right? And to get stronger in my faith and also get stronger in my practices. And now that I was teaching people, I wanted to go to a workshop specifically that would help me teach people. So I remember going to a Tantra retreat for like 7 days. And in this retreat, Goddess Amina was the person who ran the retreat, in case you wanted to know. And I could put her information down at the bottom as well. But in this retreat, a part of it was getting education and getting certified as an erotic embodiment practitioner. So I wanted to get more of like, how can I help people release trauma and also receive pleasure in our bodies instead of making our bodies or keeping our bodies on mute. Okay. I felt like for our communities, like pleasure was something that was frowned upon, right? And pleasure is like food, it's like water, it's a part of what we need. So you're not really living in your full tank self when we're denying pleasure, right? So I was just super zealous about that. But I feel like, again, the more that I was getting online with Dr. Joy, the less that my partners maybe even felt like they could hang with Dr. Joy or whatever. I've never felt that way. Like, oh, you don't even know anything. You don't research like me. I never cared, but maybe I bored them. I don't know. Maybe people felt like, well, eventually we're not going to have anything to talk about. If like what you're talking about is doing this photo shoot or doing this whole video thing with 5 editors where I was able to do my yoga set with a whole bunch of different magazines at one time. Like, what are we going to talk about? Like, I thought we could talk about anything, but there's a season, I think, for everybody where that trajectory happens with that growth and the differences. And you want to hold on. Like, I feel like I was gathering so many people and loved ones, but they were never going to be ones that I could actually hold on to. they were a part of that season of realization. And I hope that I was a part of a season for them of some realizations. And some partners were even transparent enough to tell me, like, since I've met you, a few things have changed. Like, I've learned some things about myself, and there's just certain things that I don't do or believe anymore, or whatever. So it was nice to have that type of exchange. Well, so let's say, I'm trying to think, June. In that time period between September and June, I think I was so in like growth mode. That's why I don't even have any selfies from the time period. Like, I was just in it. There was a little bit of a sad period there again, because I had to break up for like a few months or whatever, and then getting back online with that. But what ended up happening by the time June, I'm trying to think if it happened before. I'll talk a little bit about after, because even after this June photo in 2023, there's nothing for a year, because so much was happening and so much healing was happening. Okay. So I got my certification, my trauma-informed yoga certification in June. And my intention was to start an online platform where I had my videos there, like my yoga videos, as well as meditation videos and that type of thing. And so I got coaching from the person who actually did the certification with Essential Yoga as to like how to build a platform like that, right? And I even got coaching from somebody who I think she had an OnlyFans. And I remember even if I was trying to do an OnlyFans, whatever, but I wasn't. But I wanted to learn from somebody who was able to have a following of people, how to keep engagement, that type of thing. But I remember a friend being so bothered, right, by like, oh, this lady does so and so, like whatever. It doesn't matter what she does. She helps, and she actually was someone who advocated for women and for women's empowerment, and getting us to be able to be independent in whatever way that looked like, and utilize your gifts, right? So she utilized her gift the way that she utilized her gift. I never had any issues with that whatsoever. But what was so curious about, like, I started to see discrepancies in how people were just like commenting on lifestyle things, period. My daughter, at that point, I had been publishing an article, and I sent it to my daughter and my son, and my daughter's like, you need to stop sending, her basically her brother stuff about sex. I'm like, huh? It was about sensual yoga and trauma and healing. But this is my child talking to me, by the way. There was a lot that was going on in the background in terms of like parental alienation, and their dad, like just a lot of mind stuff going on. My son at some point would tell me the things that would be like, if I would drop him at the house or they would get picked up, whatever, for the weekend, because that's they'd see the dad on the weekends, the interrogations that would happen, like asking all the questions about my life and everything that I was doing, and then also inputting information. Like my son told me literally his stepmother, like, your mother's dirty, your mother, da, 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 da. Like just a list of weird things. But this was something that was happening for years, but it was really hyped up at that point. Oh yeah, June 2023. That's when I went on that trip. Okay, so that I'll say that for the next one. All right, so things are moving along. I'm getting the discrepancies from people like saying weird stuff, like the person who's like the friend who was complaining about the OnlyFans lady and all these types of things. I mean, people were complaining about stuff, but they was out here just like 304 in it for free though, like, and going hardcore with it. It was very interesting. It was like, there was an intimidation, I think, whenever people would engage a woman who was confident about her body, confident about what she did with her body, that's what it was. Like when they engaged people who didn't keep secrets about their life, their lifestyle, if you want to call it that, their life, right? Because they were people who kept so many secrets, it angered people for you to live in a way where you weren't keeping secrets. And I think now, this is me processing in this moment. proximity to me could also be very scary because I was not going to hide anything. So if you were in my life, I'm not hiding you. I'm not going out of my way to be like, hey, look who I'm with, but I'm not going to engage. If you request me to do something that hides you, I wasn't going to do it. Like, and I know that could probably be an issue for people. So I think the more that I was being published and seen, and people who were with me who I thought were living in their truth, but actually they were like enjoying living with me in my truth, right? As long as it didn't mean that they had to reveal anything about themselves, they felt okay. But then I think people started to feel honestly unsafe. um, and that's fine. It is what it is. So at some point in time, it got a little bit wild where I'm trying to think if that was the birthday. Yes, 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 yes. So say September. The next month, September 2023, okay, had my birthday, and there was a car accident. My daughter was driving, and I never let her drive to school. She wanted to drive on this particular morning, and she did. And there was a person who ran a red light, and my car was totaled, right? And she was fine, I was fine, but it was a hot mess. So that's also when, I'm going through all this stuff where I'm just trying to get through, and I'm getting not support. I'm getting the feedback of like, why are you, I don't know. It was a weird, it's so hard for me to explain this whole thing. I think because it was so out of this world, it didn't make sense. The way that people just did not show up for me, right? And it was almost like, well, you're so great and you're doing podcasts and you're doing this and that. Like, why would you need our help for anything? I'm like, oh my God. Um, so I didn't have a car for a little bit because my car was totaled. The person who ran the red light, their insurance would not cover, they didn't have good insurance. And on top of it, I had an issue with my insurance because I had literally forgotten to add my daughter as like a teenager or whatever on the insurance. So because she was driving, that became an entire issue. So I talked, I think, in the last video about a car that I got, that I manifested. And it wasn't like an intentional, it was something that I had seen in my mind's eye. So I needed a car, and I was able to get the money to get this car. I don't ask my parents for money. My parents are now passed, but like I wasn't a person who would ask for money. Like that wasn't what I did. So I was in my 40s at this point in time. So asking for help, I actually got it, and I was able to get a car. Okay. Now this was a used car, but it was good enough for me. I didn't have to go that many places, and that's it. But it was great. And it was like what do you call it? Like a top down, a convertible, right? It was a convertible. So I'm like, who knew I would ever have a red convertible? I didn't think I'd ever have a red car. Like, oh my God. So even though things would go haywire, things would pick back up. And this was really pissing off the people around me, including the partner I was living with, right? Like it was pissing people off. And I'm not understanding, like, why is everyone so disgruntled or weird or whatever? It's like, no matter what happens, she won't stay down type of thing. So eventually at some point I ended my main primary relationship. My partner was doing a lot of disloyal madness. And then I'm anchoring into my spiritual stuff and my truth, and like treating myself well. Also, the day that that my daughter had this car accident was my mom's birthday, right? My mom had passed when I was 19. So I remember being at the light and telling her, hey, listen, when we get to this, when the light turns green, because it was a red light, it was like, when the light turns green, please do not just sit here at the light. People are going to beep at us. We're like, it's going to be a problem. You need to go when the light turns green. It's like, I knew what she would do. So the light turns green. She doesn't go. Okay. Someone beeps. Like, I told you this was going to happen. She finally went. And so when she went, the person goes through the red light and she actually hits this person. Here's the thing. If she went when I told her to went, this man would have T-boned into my daughter and I would have lost my entire mind. That would be it for me. I'd be like, especially at that time, like, yeah, it would not, I don't know, I would still be here, to be completely honest. And that was a part of, like, I was going to these things and connecting spiritually, and that's it. And I realized, like, I didn't realize it was my mother's birthday until I went back to the house. I called attorneys so that we can figure out what we needed to do. And they were like, what date did it happen? I'm like, it happened today. And I said the date, and I realized, like, it's my mother's birthday. Maybe my mother stepped in and stopped my daughter from going through that light, right? Like, whatever protection or whatever we had, like, there was always protection. There was always something. Even if I thought it was devastating, it could always have been worse. In terms of getting the car, it took me a while to get the car, but then it just, something worked out where I was able to get like a free rental for like a month while they were working on the car. So stuff always kind of carried me through. Eventually I ended up ending things with my partner and, having him move out. I remember I went to the movies. I was going to the movies. I was like, hey, so listen, I'm gonna go to the movies, and it'd be great if you were not here when I got back from the movies. And he wasn't there when I got back. And that was that. I don't want to act like it was nothing. It wasn't that it was nothing, but it was like a lot of different things happening up until that point where it was more of a relief to not be sleeping with the enemy, to be feeling betrayed by the person that you're with. So I'm like, okay, I gotta do this thing on my own without this person. I had my publicist. So I had to like let my publicist go. I couldn't afford it anymore, but I could still, afford my mortgage and da 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 da. Okay, car accident happens. Like, oh my gosh, get this car. So here's what happens after I get this car and I'm living good. I was spending about $3,400 a month on this car because somebody was tampering with my car every single month, like coming into my complex and doing something with my car. So I kept bringing the car to the mechanic. I'm like, what? The same problem that was last month, it would come back up again. And then at some point, the mechanic, he had showed me under my car, like the thing had been pulled down. And I don't want to say the thing to like the brake brakes, but the brake light, he was like, oh, this brake thing has been cut. Oh, okay. But every single month there would be a new thing going on with my tires, my car, like just every single month. And so eventually I was like, it's not, who's going to keep paying $3,400 a month? I didn't have to pay a car payment or anything like that. It didn't matter. There was a period where things were going, let's say, really good at work. And I was getting paid really well for doing the groups that I was doing. And so what they did was they sent out a notice saying that whatever we were paid per group was going to be cut in half. That's crazy, right? Like, what do you establish your life around what you have coming in? And they just suddenly were like, it wasn't a time period like this is going to happen next week. It was like, no, starting now, it is half of what you were getting paid. So half my income out the window. And so what did I do? I created double the groups. I came up with more topics. That's what my brain could do. And I taught more classes. So then they limited how many classes you could teach every week or how many you could repeat. Like whatever I would do, there was always a way to be like, well, no. So I think I'll get more into the work thing again after, because it definitely goes into like what that next step was for me. So stuff is going on with work, stuff is going on with the relationship, stuff is going on with my car. I'm living by myself. So many weird things are happening. Then I was still, oh yes, okay. So I'm trying to date again after some months or whatever of being like single because all the partners were gone. I'm like, okay. I want to connect with someone. I'm saying, like it's normal. I want to say to you all, it's not necessarily healthy, normal, right? Like we should be able to be on our own. And this is probably the first time I've been on my own for as long as I've been on my own. I'd never done that before. So it was very anxiety provoking, and it can like mess with your self-esteem. Even if I ended my other relationships, I still was like, why can't I get another? Oh my God, what's wrong with me? How come people don't want to date me? Da, da, da. So I remember getting back online, like getting on, let's say Hinge, Bumble, blah, 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 blah. I was getting it was at least two apps. I was getting blocked. Like they were like, your profile has been blocked. Like, wait, what did I do? What did I say? What I was able to ascertain and figure out is that someone else had been taking my pictures, and they had created profiles on these dating apps. Who knows what they were saying to people? Who knows what they were doing? But I was literally unable to date on these apps because someone had actually gone on and created profiles. Wasn't one of those things, they didn't give me too many answers, but it wasn't one of those things where I got hyper focused on like, well, how do I stop? I'm like, fine, I guess I'm not trying to fight to date on a platform. Like, fine, whatever. Let me just continue to move through the process. Okay. So I got on, I'm trying to debate whether or not I should say which app. I use an app that I'd never used before, and it is an app that has existed for a very long time for all of us, but they added a dating feature. I'll say that. So I was like kind of like, I'm just gonna chill. And my friend's like, no, no, no. My one of my lessons was like, no, you should really try to get back out there. Da, 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 da. Not blaming, but like I was, yeah, whatever. I was guided to get back out there. And this is by people who also can't be alone, right? So I'm surrounded by people that I love and I trust, and we just know what we know. That's it. Like it's not that it's wrong. Like you just know what you know. So if someone had told me like, I think you should be alone for this amount of time, if it was someone that I trusted, I probably would have followed that, right? But that wasn't what was available to me. So anyway, I go out on a day date, and I think we had planned to go do something that night. But during this day date, this is me totally not listening to my intuition. The conversation with this person was very violent. Okay. They were very angry. They were just riding in the car. We had eaten and all that type of stuff, but like they were asking me questions about like who I had dated, like literally asking me questions about the race of people I had dated. And they're very angry about anyone dating outside of our race or culture and that type of thing, which is something I did. Right. So I'm like, does this person know who I am? Because the way they were asking questions, like, okay. But in any event, it was day date. So I'm like, okay, you go, I'll see you later, whatever. They wanted to come inside. It was really, I remember it was like really super hot. I'm like, not really, let me walk you to the door. I'm like, I'm good. You don't need to walk me to the door. Like, no, I want to walk you to the door. And then getting to the door and be like, oh, just kind of coming for a second. Whatever, the typical things that a person would say. And I'm a whole adult feeling fine. Again, during the day, everything's going to be cool. Long story short, I am assaulted in my house. And I'm embarrassed because I didn't say, fuck off and don't come in my house at all. It just, I don't know. And the conversation that had happened was, again, of a very violent nature. And I remember thinking, this person, because they had literally described how they almost killed someone with their bare hands, right? They described this entire situation, right? So my mind is like this, my head's going to get bashed into the back of the wall, and no one's going to hear me. No, like, this is going to, like, there's nothing I can do. This wasn't as horrific as I know. There's other stories about people being assaulted. It could be like really awful. And it was bad, but it wasn't, I could have been harmed like really badly. I wasn't, my pride, my dignity, those things were harmed. Right. But, and my idea of this would never happen to me, it was harmed, that was gone. So I didn't call the police right away. And I remember calling my ex and like basically begging, please come here. And he kept trying to get me. He's like, why don't you call this person who was my friend, who I eventually found out he was sleeping with. Anyway, he kept being like, call this person. I'm like, why do you want me to call them? I'm like, talking to you like I want you here. It didn't matter if you were my ex. Like, you have a relationship with somebody, you trust them. You don't want to talk to everybody about everything, whatever. And again, I was embarrassed. So I end up I did call my friend or whatever, and she did ask to come with me to like the hospital where they did the, because I ended up calling the police like the next day, whatever. Um, I went by myself to the hospital. It was, y'all, I, I don't even really want to talk about how bad it was. It was bad. I mean, the paperwork, literally, I'm glad they said the name out loud. They put the wrong name on my paperwork. That was like the least of the things that happened during the entire exam. Like, it was the worst. And to know that this is the type of care that you get. And then on top of it, having like a detective who, it's like they're almost sent out there to be like, we don't believe you. So let me make you feel so uncomfortable. So if you are lying, you feel uncomfortable about lying. Like, what? The whole situation was terrible. And then, to make matters worse, my kid's dad, who I didn't know, again, was like a full-blown narcissist at this point, like really was not aware. Because of his position, right? I wanted to make sure that someone took this case seriously and that type of thing. He made sure not to call anybody, he made sure not to help in any way, shape, or form. There was an instance at some point during this time frame where my God, he started like throwing all types of legal stuff at me. And so I had like a family court case and I had an attorney. I was able to afford to get an attorney. Every time I was able to afford to get an attorney, I'm like, oh my God, because that's not something that everybody can do. I'm like, how do we even manage these systems? So I was able to get this attorney, and he was able to locate this attorney and get this attorney to not work with me and not tell me why, which is completely unethical. Like, what? So I remember being like, hey, what's going on? Like, I just can no longer work with you, but why? Like, I'm paying you money. Like, I just can't work with you. So at some point in time, I'm saying this is a long period of time between like September and June, right? At some point in time, this person had, or I'm sorry, it was a little after June, whatever, it doesn't matter. This man came into my house, right? Not like he broke in my house. I'm talking about my ex. He was like picking up the kids or whatever. So at this point in time, I still had been allowing like access and regular conversation, trying to be normal with this person. And I remember being like, I know what you've done and that you've like made this person not work with me and you're doing these things with these attorneys and that's not right. This man did not deny anything that I said. He looked me right in my face and told me, if you listen to what I tell you to do, you won't have these problems. So I was put on notice that when it came to the justice system, I would not ever have justice. And that has been proven, which I will talk about in future videos. But I was made aware that I was really alone in a lot of this stuff. Eventually, my friend, my ex, everybody kind of disappeared. So during this time period, I'm like battling a lot of things by myself. And I'm also still working. I got into the yoga studio and I started doing the yoga class every week. And it was beautiful, 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 beautiful. Like, loved it. One of the things that happened while I was doing this thing, and it was very healing for me to be teaching this class, to be doing this class, to be doing the essential yoga. I would do it on my own. I would do it, obviously for class, but it was what I needed. And I sat down in class the first day I did class, and I don't know what it was that gave me the information in my brain, but it was like, there's someone in this class who has slept with one of my partners. Like, it was a specific partner. It was like, there's someone who has slept with this man. I don't know why I know this, but I know this. I ended up finding out later that that was absolutely true, that the ex-wife of a partner had literally been coming to every single one of my classes for 6 months, sitting in the front row. This was the energy that was constantly around me, monitoring, like tampering, just madness. Then I also found out, because eventually I sold my house because I couldn't take all the stuff that was happening, that my partner who had been living with me had, we had a ring camera in the front, but I had other Ring cameras in the house. And especially after I was assaulted, I made sure I added an extra camera. Okay. I didn't want anyone to be able to break in. Like, I was a woman living by myself, worried, right? There's one of these nudges that I got to take a look. Come to find out that my partner had been just tapping into the Ring camera and watching me throughout my house. It would show me when this camera was turned on, this camera. And, you know, just being straight up, grown ass woman, I could do what I want, right? I would typically, especially during this time period after the assault, after like so many things had been happening, I'd be walking around my house naked and high. Like, that's what was happening. If I wasn't working, okay, or taking a nap or taking care of the dogs, that's what I was doing. I was going in deep and processing. I was sad. Oh no. Oh, sorry. Um, and during this time, it was like I felt like I was out of it, right? But this period, this person was actually utilizing this time to, God knows who he was showing this to, but literally watching me for quite some time. Quite some time. So of course I got rid of him off, like his access off of the account. I confronted him about it. Whatever. Um, it was so much trauma condensed in one space of time. And I know that there's more, and it's like kind of hard to remember what things happened before June, after June. There was just so freaking much. I know at some point in time, in regards to like the justice system and things being fair, things happened with my kids where my ex was able to show me again his power in this way. Yes. Okay. So I had so it was I was able to do a speaking engagement for work. They hired me to do something in California. And I was so excited. It was great. It was a great, everything was always like a stepping stone and other people wanting me to speak for them, all those type of things, right? And I was able to earn the money to take my kids to Barbados. And my family's from Barbados. So I really wanted us to go back, like, or to be there. I had never been there. Like, oh, I've been trying to do this forever. I'd actually like booked something in COVID and then we had to cancel it because COVID happened, right? So I was finally able to afford to do that. And that was the beginning of like, whew, hellfire, because my ex was able to see that I could do something like for real on my own. And when I came back from the trip, I gave the kids their passports and I had my passport. About 3 days later, I realized that I had my son's passport, which means I'd given my son my passport. So when I asked my son for my passport, I was like, oh, we switched passports. I need it back. He told me he didn't have it. I was like, well, I gave it to you. So, it had to be. He was like, well, when we came in the house, they told us to put it on the counter, which means that his dad and his stepmom, they got my passport. To this day, they refuse to give me my passport. They just refused. He was able to get back my son's passport through court. Like, that was like my only leverage to get my passport back, but completely will not like. And everyone that I talked to was like, "Oh, he stole my passport. Ugh, just replace it. Just replace it." And they're all a part of like his community. Oh, what's the big deal? Like, no one, y'all understand it's a crime to steal someone's passport, right? Not in their world. Nothing's a crime unless we say it's a crime. So very much in this space of I can't trust anyone to have my back, right? Even if I hire an attorney, I cannot trust them to actually have my back. So I would just much rather be not a part of this system altogether. I'm saying this very plainly, very like, oh, this happened. Like, obviously, there was a lot of processing that happened there, a lot of falling apart. What was very significant to me about this time period was the really the falling apart alone. There just kept being people who were not present. Like, and I kept having to drop into that reality that people could remove themselves at any point in time from their lives. It wasn't like people remove themselves permanently. They removed themselves from any part of my life that was not fun, that wasn't famous making, that wasn't like, oh, come travel with me to so and so, I got to do this podcast right quick. If it wasn't that type of life, they were like, I mean, I had a friend literally tell me like, oh my God, we all have problems. Like, I don't talk about my problems. Why are you talking about your problems? Like, what is this? What is this? You have a problem, and you'll see really who is for you and who's not for you. Me not being superwoman and amazing, I lost my qualifications for connections. Um, it was bananas, but it was necessary. It was a necessary season. Some might call this the beginning of the dark night of the soul that I had, right? But um depressed, I definitely was. I was definitely depressed. Definitely depressed. How I continued working, don't know. But I was doing it. I did continue working. And I eventually left the place that I was in terms of work, but I will probably get into that in the next video. So what are the takeaways here? um, Follow your intuition when you are around anyone who could pose a threat to you, which is anyone, everyone, right? It doesn't matter if you're hanging out with people during the day, at night. You know, we've had so many stories about people leaving the country with their friends and then getting jumped and killed, and you never know who is in your background. I feel very grateful that the worst of worst things hadn't happened to me while I had people who were not in my corner. I'm grateful that it's things that I was able to survive, that I was able to come back from. I can never come back from certain things from a psychological standpoint, meaning like I can never have that whimsical naivete about certain things, right? Living dangerously. I can't. Um, yeah, I can't. But I'm not afraid in a way like everyone's going to hurt me. I have also learned more about the protection that I have over my being, over my life, that I keep coming out of stuff. I know that no matter what, like that's what's gonna happen, right? I'm always going to be okay. I've seen um just rescues. I'm like, whoa, where would that come from? And because I prayed, because I cried, because I meditated on it, because I didn't give up. I didn't just fall on the ground and stay on the ground. I gave myself time periods to be completely out, to be completely useless. I gave myself this space that was very much needed. Mm. Okay, sorry. So the lesson in that is take the time that you need. Um, be as angry as you want to be, but not in a way where you're giving your power away, where you can't function. Um, have conversations with yourself, the kind of conversations that you wish other people would have with you. So what I mean by that is like speak to yourself with the compassion that you wish someone else would speak to you. Like really do that. Um, the things that you wish people would say when you would reach out to them, that you either wish that they would say that it's going to be okay, or you wish that they would say like that really sucks, you don't deserve this, it does get better, or you need someone just to remind you of like a cycle they've been through, but that it was a cycle and they came out on the other side. Remind yourself of the cycles that you've been through and you came out on the other side. I mentioned in the last video, like I know every time something happens, I'm always like, but it's never been this bad. But I do remember stuff where it has been bad. Um, but there's no need to really compare like the level of bad. Bad is just bad. But you are, in my experience, the people who are around me that I know that like, I mean, like my soul tribe, right? You're probably a badass more so than the bad stuff that's happening to you, right? If you're still here, and you still have clothes on your back and you still have a chair to sit in, like you're beating life. You're beating the nonsense. Because a lot of times, a lot of the stuff that comes upon you, especially when it comes on you at one time, maybe these things are being thrown at you, not just for a lesson, but from a negative standpoint, maybe they're being thrown at you to make you get to a point where you do take yourself out, right? Where you feel like there is no point. Maybe that's the game. And I'm so freaking stubborn. I'm like, yeah, but no, I'm definitely going to win this game. I'm going to win this. You're not going to get me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to let the things of the world that remind me that I live on earth. Like, okay, I get it. These are the things that happen, right? But I'm still more powerful than the things that happen. And the support that I have, right, my spiritual continence is more powerful than the 3D things that happen. The people who have come before us, who have probably gone through a lot more degradations and repeated things and really had no support, how do they survive? How do we survive in a community where, as a person of color, or maybe as a woman, like, you could not report that your husband abused you, you couldn't report being taken advantage of in any way, you just had to keep going? How did women do this? They probably did it because they had faith, right? They probably did it because they had a conversation with their God that held them in a way that no human ever can. So say these things happen from, let's say the universe, the divine actually implement or put these things in place. Maybe, I know people have a perspective that, like, God is a selfish God and only wants you to focus on her or him or whatever. It could be that perspective as well, right? Whatever perspective you need to take from it. As long as the perspective that you take is not that you are a weakling, right? That can be broken. You can be bent. You can be agile. You can be flexible. That was actually a big theme during that time period where I was really like sad, like, how do I make it? It was like the messaging that I kept like receiving is be adaptable. Be adaptable. How do you adapt to this thing, right? Be the chameleon. And not for the purpose of, I'm going to show you all. No, I'm going to just live my life. Like, I'm going to live. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to live. I'm not going to give you the power to make choices about how my life is going to be. If I beat you down enough with this, then your life is going to be like this and you're going to be sad like me. No, I'm not. I decide. No, I'm not. So that was probably one of the biggest things, like, kind of needing to frame attacks as a challenge and not as a barrier, not as a locked door. Move around, move around, move around. It was probably better that I was going through that period without a lot of the people that I did have in my life, where I was able to process more genuinely and things that were more in line with my values than actually processing with other people. Because again, if they're in a position where they have been hurt and they have not healed from their hurt, how much can they give me? The one person that I said something, a really close friend, I said something to, she told what what her story was for me was to describe how she had been attacked viciously, almost like, well, mine was much worse than yours. I'm like, oh my God, like, I don't understand. And it wasn't like she was saying, and I survived it and I'm good. It wasn't that. She's like, yeah, everything sucks. And this is what they did to me. And it was, and then he did this. And it's like, oh my God, like, why, what? You know, oh, sometimes it's just better to process this stuff either on your own or in a safe place that is specifically for someone who has survived these types of things, right? But you have to be discerning about the spaces even then, because you could be with somebody who's on their healing journey where they're just in the anger spot of their journey and you need someone who's not. Or maybe you do need to be in that, but like, be discerning. Don't feel obligated to tell everybody all your things, to stay in spaces where it doesn't feel like it's feeding you, where you feel more drained, where you're not getting something from it. It is okay to dismiss yourself from those spaces. And also, being on your own or without people is not a measure of popularity, a measure of goodness or lovability or anything like that. We're just in different spaces in our journeys. And sometimes We are compatible with our neighbors, with our friends, our family, and sometimes we're just not. And we don't have to fight for compatibility. We just have to be and see where the chips land, really. Um, so that's pretty much what that space looked like and kind of the lessons that I got from there. I know this is a little bit more of a dark one in every way, even the lighting, everything was darker. Um, but I did want to be able to say out loud what you can survive, right? Give yourself grace and then get back up. It's that simple. I'm not going to dive too much into like the reframe that I had to have around like what it means to be assaulted and that type of thing. I will say that I was assaulted the day before I um was publishing my app, my sensual yoga app. So it was like the day before I was doing something that could be taboo, that could almost be looked at as like my work could be looked at as if I'm a sex worker or whatever. Again, if that is how people identify me, it is what it is. I don't care. But it felt almost like an attack on that part of me. Like, no, you can't be that. And so I published it anyway. Tears and all. If I knew that I had a mission, I had a thing that I was going to do, I was going to do it regardless. I still processed the pain of everything, but I never felt like inserts in my story had power over destined things in my story already. Like that we were already on this mission. I'm never going to let life make me more afraid of what could happen. Anything could happen. But I know what could happen. The things that I'm doing, I know that I'm going to do them. I know that I can do them. So stick to what you know and do what you know. Okay. That is it. Any resources when I listen to this again, I'll pop them down into the description thingy. And I will see you next time. All right. Bye.